Namaste. Good morning. A warm welcome to every one of you present here. I am Madhumita, assuming the role of the Sutradhari, which quite literally means the thread holder, as I guide you through today's sessions and weave through the discussions that lie ahead. Tamil is one of the oldest languages in the world, and it actually happens to be that it's also my mother tongue. And in Tamil, there is a very profound phrase, Yadavum Ure, Yavarum Kelir. It translates to say that all the towns in the world is one for us, and all the citizens in the world are our kin. So in this philosophy, India comes today to the United Nations to share the transformative citizen stack with all of you. Without further ado, I have the honor to invite Her Excellency Ruchira Kamboj, the permanent representative of India to the United Nations, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Madhumita, and thank you for that very inspired beginning. The President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Dennis Francis, the Administrator UNDP, Mr. Achim Steiner, our G20 Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant, my dear ambassador friends and colleagues, Mr. Sharad Sharma, Mr. Srivatsa Krishna, the wonderful iceberg team from India, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I want to share a story that echoes from the streets of Khurja, a small town in India, where a remarkable woman named Geeta lives. Now, Geeta is a mother of two and a tailor. She never had the chance to attend university. Every day, she stitches clothes for her neighbors, earning her wage in crumpled bills of tens and hundreds. With every stitch, she weaves her dreams, not just for herself, but for her children, ensuring that they receive the education that she missed. Geeta's routine included a monthly trip to the city bank, trading a day's earnings for a bus ride to deposit her hard-earned savings. She dreamed of saving enough to expand her small tailoring business into something much bigger. She aspired to be a businesswoman. One day, in 2016, a change sparked when a customer asked if she would accept payment via India's United Payments Interface, or the UPI. Unfamiliar, but intrigued, Geeta decided it was time to learn something new. She found a tutorial video by the Press Information Bureau produced by the Government of India, and what she discovered was nothing short of a revolution. It opened up a world where she could connect with customers not just in her locality, but across the country. Today, Geeta doesn't make those trips to the bank anymore. Instead, she spends that time at her children's school, watching them learn and grow, secure in the knowledge that their future is bright. Payments for her tailored clothes now come instantly on her phone from all over India. She saves for her business and pays for her children's tuition, all through a digital wallet on her mobile. And Geeta has become what she always wanted to be, a successful businesswoman empowered by the digital age. Now, this transformation was made possible by the India Stack, a pioneering force in building digital public infrastructure, turning 1 billion dreams like Geeta's into reality. It has revolutionized everyday transactions in India, from buying vegetables to consuming street food like the famous Indian pani puri, from taking loans to saving money. Within 6 years, and I stress that, within 6 years, India has achieved an 80% financial inclusion rate, a feat that would have taken decades without such digital infrastructure. So as we gather here today, celebrating the empowerment of billions in India, we remind ourselves of the words of Secretary General Antonio Guterres that partnerships must continue to be at the heart of our strategy. And embracing the spirit of our G20 leadership, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, together for everyone's growth, we are deeply honored and privileged to have our G20 Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant, with us as we seek to build partnerships that extend this empowerment globally. Colleagues, I will just remind you of what the International Monetary Fund has noted in its working paper, Stacking Up the Benefits, Lessons from India's Digital Journey, that India's journey offers powerful lessons for other nations embarking on digital transformations, emphasizing a design approach focused on shared building blocks to spur innovation across ecosystems. So today, as we invite you to engage with us, let's stack up the benefits worldwide and help millions more like Geeta achieve their dreams. Thank you very much for joining us on this day of constructive engagement. Let's inspire and be inspired as we work together to build a digitally empowered world. Back to you, Madhumita.
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, all information regarding Citizen Stack and including today's agenda is available on the website. The QR code for the website is on the notebooks that is kept in front of you. At this particular point of time, I would also like to point out that the website is available in the priority languages of the United Nations as well. Also, tomorrow we are having country bilateral sessions at the Permanent Mission of India. We have a paper that's kept in front of all of you to sign up for those bilateral sessions. We strongly encourage you come in for these one-on-one sessions because we want to start the journey, we want to start the discussion to have a tailor-made citizen stack for your citizens in your country. Moving on, to command is to serve, nothing more and nothing less. It is with this philosophy that our Honorable Minister for Railways and Communications and Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, operates to share Citizen Stack with the world. Let us listen to his short message for us today.
Excellencies and distinguished delegates, it is an honor to welcome you all to the first ever United Nations Conference on Digital Public Infrastructure, or DPI in short. Today, I will share India's journey in harnessing the power of digital public infrastructure to foster inclusive growth and prosperity for all. Our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, is a strong advocate for making technology accessible to all. He believes that everyone, regardless of background or location, deserves to reap the benefits of technology. India has made it a policy objective to ensure that the benefits of digital revolution reach every corner of our diverse society. The vision has led to the development of India Stack, a bouquet of digital tools accessible to everyone. Building this public infrastructure was a true team effort. The government, private sector, non-profit organizations, and volunteers all played a crucial role. The India Stack is like a set of building blocks for our digital world. Each piece, like digital identity, digital signature, digital locker, has a specific purpose. Together, these tools unlock solutions for complex problems affecting millions of people. Let us take the example of Aadhaar, India's digital identity artifact. Almost 1.4 billion residents in India today possess an Aadhaar number, which allows them to perform a number of actions. Aadhaar enables remotely authenticating identity, retrieving electronic records, and electronically signing documents. About 113 billion authentications have been done using Aadhaar so far. The cost of Know Your Customer KYC has reduced dramatically from about $7 to just less than 4 cents. This has enabled engagement of 510 million bank accounts for people who were earlier unbanked. Where would you find an inclusive development like this? Effective digital public infrastructure relies on secure and adaptable platforms funded by the public sector. These platforms empower businesses to develop solutions that reach vast populations. As a result, users benefit from a wide range of digital services. India's digital payments platform, UPI, is a good example of this approach. Funded by the public sector, UPI has grown into a massive ecosystem with over 570 banks, 50 million businesses, and 410 million users. This collaboration has resulted in a staggering 13 billion near instant transactions processed in just 1 month, the month of March 2024. The G20 summit in New Delhi last year recognized the transformative power of DPI. Following this, India took the initiative to establish a global repository for DPIs, currently housing over 55 DPIs from 16 countries. Furthermore, India has pledged $200 million to a social impact fund that will accelerate DPI adoption globally, especially in the developing countries. As India shares its journey, we hope to inspire other nations and learn from everybody and define our own digital priorities. We believe we all have a collective responsibility to create a more inclusive and prosperous planet. Our goal is and should be inclusive growth. India believes in the ethos of one earth, one family, one future. Consistent with our ethos, we offer our citizen stack to the world. Let us join hands together to build a future of shared success and unwavering inclusivity. Thank you very much, and I wish you all very good deliberations at this conference. Thank you.
It is my distinct pleasure to welcome His Excellency Dennis Francis, President of the UN General Assembly, to our gathering today. In the recent past, His Excellency lauded India's use of digitalization that has helped achieve financial inclusion and suggested that lessons be shared with the global community. Sir, inspired by your message, we bring Citizen Stack to the United Nations today in the inaugural conference. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to His Excellency Dennis Francis to share his remarks.
Your Excellency Ashwini Vaishnav, Minister of Railways, Communications and Electronics and Information Technology of the Republic of India, Your Excellency Ruchira Kamboj, Permanent Representative of the Republic of India to the United Nations, Mr. Akim Steiner, Administrator of the United Nations Development Programme, Mr. Amitabh Kant, G20 Sherpa of the Republic of India, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is very much my pleasure to be here today as we address a matter that is of vital importance to the United Nations, equally so in India and in many other parts of the world. Just as physical infrastructure is essential for economic growth, digital public infrastructure has emerged as a fundamental driver of social transformation and progress. If accessed in an inclusive way, it facilitates equal opportunities in every aspect of our lives. The trajectory of India exemplifies this. During my visit in January, I had the privilege to observe how the rapid expansion of digital public infrastructure in India has broadened access, thereby enabling millions who previously operated either on the fringes of the economic system or outside of it to achieve financial independence and prosperity. In just 7 years, India's digital public infrastructure model has achieved over 80% financial inclusion for its citizens and now accounts for more than 60% of all digital transactions worldwide. This model has effectively dismantled numerous barriers, enhancing accessibility and affordability in the financial sector. Models like the Citizen Stack should be embraced and replicated across countries in the Global South, supporting and empowering people, particularly the most vulnerable in our communities, in the true spirit of leaving no one behind. Excellencies, while we should certainly celebrate the advancements in digital connectivity, we must also acknowledge that approximately 3 billion people, or 37% of the world's population, have never used the internet. Discussing digital infrastructure, let alone a digital revolution, is particularly challenging in environments where disparities are so immense and profoundly pronounced. This issue was a key element during the recently concluded Sustainability Week I convened here at the United Nations, which aimed to advance sector-specific conversations crucial for achieving the SDGs, such as infrastructure connectivity. During this first ever Sustainability Week, member states, the private sector, and other stakeholders reiterated the importance of meaningful investment in quality infrastructure, including digital infrastructure, to ensure equitable distribution of benefits. While acknowledging legitimate concerns about data privacy, cybersecurity, and the potential for technology misuse, we must work diligently to close digital divides, enhance digital literacy as the basis for expanding inclusion and thus achieving digital democracy that will level the playing field. The effort is crucial to uphold the central tenet of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As I conclude, I must underscore that with the ambitious intergovernmental process of developing a global digital compact underway as part of the Summit of the Future in September, we have an opportunity to close the digital divide and expand digital infrastructure for a third of the global population. The coming months are thus critical for shaping a common vision of the global digital cooperation, offering an opportunity, especially for countries in the Global South, to take a proactive role in this process to achieve the SDGs by 2030 through developing an effective command of the digital technology. I take this opportunity to commend the Digital Public Goods Alliance, endorsed by the UN Secretary General, as well as the G20's new framework for systems of digital public infrastructure. Both initiatives are remarkable examples of what is possible when we commit to digital cooperation, involving all stakeholders as a part of our transformative agenda. I look forward to today's presentations and their invaluable contributions to the ongoing efforts at the UN to achieve peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now request His Excellency Achim Steiner, Administrator of the UN Development Programme, to address the gathering.
Thank you so much, His Excellency President of the General Assembly, Her Excellency Ruchira Kambodge, the Permanent Representative of the Republic of India, and His Excellency Mr. Amitabh Kant, G20 Sherpa of the Indian Presidency, and I have to say also a mentor, a friend, and a true colleague over many years. And I want to first of all thank you, Ambassador, for inviting me to join you today on this day when India is coming to the United Nations to share more of its insight, both about that which you have now called the Citizen Stack. It was an India Stack, but it is also a presentation of vision translated into action. And much of what I, in the tenure that I have had with the United Nations Development Programme, have been able to do intersects very much with what India has, without any question, become a global leader in. which is to harness technology, but also to have, as you have put, the 5 circles of wisdom. I think it's a wonderful, if you've not had a chance, in the paper that is here on the page that talks about the blueprint for digital transformation, there is a recognition that technology in itself is an opportunity, but is not yet an outcome. That we need to think of digital public infrastructure, a term that during the G20 presidency, Amitabh, you and the Prime Minister and many across India have really socialized in an international context, because much of what explains India's remarkable journey is an appreciation that you need a digital public infrastructure. Just like in the 18th and 19th century, roads, bridges, railways became the tracks on which an economy and a society could advance. It is today not just the fiber optic cable. You need more than that. You need a digital public infrastructure. And here, we in the United Nations Development Programme, as part of our overall attempt to learn from across the globe, are very much aligned with, first of all, embracing this concept of digital public infrastructure, because we believe that it is not just the product of private sector technology or service offers. And I think your choice of citizen stack also signals something else. For quite a while in the digital universe, the frontier of many of the services, we were called users. But in today's world, we realize that digital is transforming every aspect of our lives. Therefore, we are not just users, we are digital citizens. How does a government, how does an economy, how does a development vision begin to give expression to that? And I very much appreciate these 5 sutras that you have put alongside a vision of how transformative digital can be. Citizens' agency and privacy, interoperability, techno-legal regulation, bypassing corporatization and private monopoly. We see it everywhere right now. Safeguarding against weaponization. And in that sense, where India is today sharing with you its vision of citizen stack and its offer also to work with other countries, we are very much aligned. Indeed, Amitabh, India and you chose UNDP as an official partner, knowledge partner in the G20 on DPI, and we have certainly used that partnership to also significantly advance our own engagement. We today see that there is a set of conditions that allow the kind of vision to come to maturity that you will hear a lot more about from Amitabh in a moment. Digital governance, it is critical that we have a clear understanding of how government is not controlling but enabling, but at the same time also regulating. You have it in your paper here. And at the same time, we have the digital foundations, which is the technology, the possibility. And today we talk about digital. Artificial intelligence is knocking on the door, and tomorrow we have quantum computing. We are going to live through a period of extraordinary pivots in terms of possibilities. But then, and this is the principal preoccupation of UNDP, in order to achieve also that vision that the minister spoke of, inclusivity and inclusion, we need to talk about digital capacity, digital capability. Not every country, not every economy, not every citizenry, not even every generation of school leavers is entering this universe on an equal footing. As a development program of the United Nations, we are deeply committed and we have invested heavily in becoming ourselves digitally literate, and secondly, to be able to appreciate what it is that we can offer and support countries with as they build their digital ecosystem, their digital public infrastructure, and begin to invest in essentially a realm of transformative actions that, together with the ITU and UNDP last year at the SDGs Summit, we presented a report that showed that digital could accelerate 70% of the implementation of SDG indicators, or rather targets, 70%. The significance of that is also reflected again in your paper on how the citizen stack or India stack is becoming a significant driver of GDP in India. As the development program of the United Nations, we believe deeply in the power, the potential, and the possibility. We need to now ensure that countries have the right governance frameworks, the right partnerships, including that which India is offering, and also the right capacities and capabilities. We are heavily committed to continue to invest in that, to work with all of you as part of the United Nations membership, and to draw on the Digital Public Goods Alliance that you just referred to, President, which indeed UNDP has been the secretariat to. We are also an institution that is seeking to work with countries such as India and following the G20 presidency on appreciating how can we best complement the bilateral partnerships, but also the multilateral platforms on which the kind of capacity building and realization of possibility can accelerate. I end with a simple reference to a UNDP Human Development Report, and you will remember that, Amitabh, a couple of years ago, where the HDR stated that the greatest variables for greater equity or greater inequity in the coming decades will be climate change and digital. They are possibilities that can go either way. And I think what you will present and what you are bringing us together here today is precisely the kind of vision that harnesses possibilities with a very deliberate but also a very ambitious and visionary approach. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Moving on, His Excellency Amandeep Singh Gill, the Secretary General's Envoy on Technology, has a special message to share with all of us today. Let us listen in.
General Assembly, Excellency Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj. Though I'm unable to join you in person today, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to address you through this video. I want to start by thanking India for taking the initiative to gather us in this meeting focused on digital public infrastructure. And you will hear shortly from India's G20 Sherpa about the excellent achievements made in this field under India's leadership last year. So there again, I want to thank India for bringing the world to a new consensus on DPIs through the adoption of the G20 DPI framework. We have now an opportunity at the Summit of the Future through the Global Digital Compact to take that consensus to the next level. In the zero draft of the Global Digital Compact, the co-facilitators, Sweden and Zambia, have underlined the important role that DPIs can play in accelerating inclusive digital transformation. The role that DPIs can play in bridging the last mile gap on government services and also bringing more entrepreneurs into the digital economy innovation ecosystem. We have a lot of excellent evidence and experience from Asia, from Africa, from Latin America, from different use cases, from the financial services use case to the acceleration of government services and reducing the gap between the citizen and the government, to now allow us to bring together these experiences and inform the work that is urgently needed to scale digital public infrastructure across the globe, to bridge the digital divide and to accelerate progress on the Sustainable Development Goal. The zero draft of the Global Digital Compact underlines a few key elements in this journey. First, the need for greater investments and greater enabling. Two, the need for partnerships, particularly partnerships across the public and the private sector, and with civil society and with communities to ensure that DPIs are scaled responsibly, inclusively, and sustainably. The draft also underlines the importance of safeguards for DPIs, and realizing the importance of such a safeguards framework, my office has launched together with the UNDP an initiative that aims to bring together lived experience from around the world to gather the best practices and inform the DPIs community of steps that need to be taken to handle the risk, to ensure that there is inclusive participation, and to ensure that DPIs benefit everyone. The guiding principle in this approach has been that if we ensure safety, that'll beget trust. And if we ensure inclusion, that'll get us to equity. So with those basic foundations in place, we can move forward with greater confidence on DPIs. I want to conclude by underlining the importance of such gatherings, bringing in experience from the leaders on DPI, from India, from Bangladesh, from Rwanda, from Estonia, from Brazil, from Jamaica, many other countries around the world who are successfully leveraging DPIs at scale to transform their society and turbocharge their economies. I wish you the very best in your deliberations.
We have up next India's G20 presidency, guided by the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, has made significant strides in the realm of digital transformation. The New Delhi G20 declaration underscored the critical role of safe, secure, trusted, accountable, and inclusive digital public infrastructure, respectful of human rights, personal data, privacy, and intellectual property rights that can foster resilience and enable service delivery and innovation. The declaration emphasized on building safety, security, resilience, and trust in the digital economy. On that note, it is my privilege to introduce Mr. Amitabh Kant, the architect of India's impactful G20 presidency and the Government of India's G20 Sherpa, to deliver the keynote address.
His Excellency, the President of the General Assembly, Mr. Dennis Francis, India's permanent representative to the UN, Ruchira Kamboj, and I would like to compliment her on taking the initiative to hold this conference here. And my friend, the administrator of the UNDP, Mr. Akim Steiner, who's been a very big advocate of the digital public infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is facing several challenges. In the post-COVID era, we've seen a huge number of people going below the poverty line. We have seen people lose their jobs. We're seeing over 90 countries facing debt crisis. We're seeing the challenge of climate action and climate finance. We're seeing the challenge of food, fuel, and fertilizer. We're seeing conflict in Europe as well as in the Middle East. But in the midst of all these challenges, there's one silver lining. And that one silver lining actually has demonstrated that it is possible for the world to grow and advance and develop with equity using the power of digital technology. Ladies and gentlemen, digital public infrastructure exploded at an exponential pace during pandemic, and to our mind will truly dominate the architecture of tech development for growth with equity in future. During the pandemic period, the digital public infrastructure could provide emergency fiscal transfer to hundreds of millions. It could provide health systems with support to coordinate vaccine deployment across large populations. In India, we could provide vaccination to 2.2 billion people without any paperwork. It was all digital. We could provide education to a vast range of young children across the country in content across 30 Indian languages. The digital e-commerce platform could really blunt the ravages of lockdown, and we could enlist almost 12 million kirana stores, small shopkeepers, in the e-commerce engagement. And in the first month of the pandemic itself, we could transfer money straight into the bank account of poor households. And this was all possible without any leakage through digital public infrastructure-enabled direct benefit transfer. In India today, in 657 schemes of the government, we transfer close to about 75 billion funds to beneficiaries through, without any single challenge of leakages. The money goes straight into the bank account of beneficiaries. And this has all been possible because of the digital public infrastructure. In the last few years in India, we were able to provide 1.4 billion people with digital identity. Then between 2015 and 2017, we opened 520 million bank accounts. 520 million bank accounts were then, through a process of a missionary drive, linked with both the digital identity and the mobile number. And this then enabled citizens in India to do digital fast payments. Many of us in India have not been to a physical bank. We have not used our checkbooks. We've not used our debit credit card. We've not been to an ATM machine for over 5 years. Because for us, our mobile is our virtual bank from which we do our debit and credit. The only time I used my credit card was when I came to San Francisco to visit my daughter and I had to take a Uber vehicle. And in India, nobody during the COVID period ever used a paper certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the beginning. So identity, bank accounts, linking them with identity and mobile number. And then you had a range of young startups, a whole range of young startups, MobiKwik, Pine Labs, who started giving credit on the basis of the payment history. And then you had another set of young startups, Zerodha, Grow, Upstock in India, and all of them are unicorn, who then took the stock market and wealth creation to Tier 2, Tier 3 cities of India. And today, they control, these young unicorn startups control 31% of India's stock markets. And then you had another set of young startups like GoDigit and Acco who took the digital public infrastructure of insurance into Tier 2, Tier 3 cities and rural area. And therefore, in India, you can do a stock transaction in 30 seconds. You can do a fast payment in 30 seconds. You can buy an insurance policy in one minute. Now, I have seen this changing before my eyes because when I was growing up, a life insurance policy used to take 7 months. Opening a fisherman's bank account used to take months of paperwork, chasing bank managers. Know your identity was a nightmare. All this has been transformed into 30 seconds to 1 minute. That has been the transformational story through the digital public infrastructure. So ladies and gentlemen, the challenge before the world today, to my mind, is that there are 4 billion people who do not have a digital identity. There are close to about 2 billion people who do not have a bank account. And there are 133 countries who cannot do fast payments in the world. Only about 55% of adults in developing countries are able to access emergency money within 30 days of any unforeseen expenditure. Governments struggled to support vulnerable sections of society because of their inability to transfer cash directly into the accounts of eligible individuals. And a huge amount of money gets leaked. Government money going to the beneficiaries is full of leakages. It's full of leakages because you do not have digital public infrastructure. And small and medium enterprises suffer because there is no targeted intervention. All this can be transformed through the digital public infrastructure. So ladies and gentlemen, what is digital public infrastructure? And to our mind, digital public infrastructure has been defined recently by the World Bank. And it's important to dwell a little bit on this, that what it says, what the World Bank says about digital public infrastructure. When it says that digital public infrastructure is actually a convergence of both public interest and with allowing private sector to innovate on top of the public interest layer. And what we've seen is that it's the private sector innovation which drives efficiency on top of a public interest layer. And that, to our mind, is key. In all cases, it's a combination of both private investment and public interest layer which has been responsible for the success of digital public infrastructure. Now, countries worldwide are adopting DPI, and they are doing it because DPI, digital public infrastructure, has empowered and protected individuals over their money and over their data. Countries are pushing for deep digital public infrastructure because it has allowed countries to leapfrog and accelerate development. In India, according to the Bank of International Settlement, we could achieve financial inclusion in 7 years. What would it would have taken India 50 years to achieve. So 50 years of work was done in 7 years by pushing for digital public infrastructure. So digital public infrastructure is also a means of spurring market innovation, and we've seen a huge amount of innovation in a range of areas, from insurance to fast payments to stock market, all happening to the benefit of citizens. And in India, we have another startup, PhonePe, which is today close to a 14 billion fintech on the strength of being a digital public infrastructure. But more importantly, I think digital public infrastructure is important because it enables vulnerable group, remote populations, women, small and medium enterprises, all of them to access services and to technologically leapfrog. It will not be possible to achieve sustainable development goals, however hard UNDP, the United Nations, may try. It will not be possible to achieve our goals by 2030 without the digital public infrastructure. And therefore, our view, ladies and gentlemen, is that there is a huge amount which can be done. And if you look at it, many countries are doing it. It's on verifiable identity, Nigeria with national ID, Philippines via PhilSys. In India, we have Aadhaar. Peru, you have DNI. Morocco, Thailand, Bangladesh have all implemented verifiable identity systems to have financial and health systems. This is all leading to inclusion. And on verifiable credentials, you have India's DigiLocker, which has enabled multiple government departments to issue verifiable credentials and allow private entities to access their open request APIs. And in interoperable payments, you have a whole range of models across the world. Brazil's Pix, Singapore Pay Now, Thailand's Prompt Pay are examples of DPI for interoperable person-to-person, person-to-merchants payment that have enabled transactions via published QR code. And India actually has been a partner in all this through its own example of Unified Public Interface, the UPI. And for open APIs for government services, we in India have the Digital Empowerment Protection Architecture, which has enabled every citizen to, this data is owned by the citizen, and that to our mind is key. If you look at the big tech model of what has happened in the last 2 decades, the data has not been owned by the citizen. The data is owned by the service provider in the model which is a monopoly. In the case of big tech across several areas, the data is owned by them, not by the citizens. But in the model of digital public infrastructure, the data is owned by the citizens. And there are several examples of this. Australia's consumer data right comes out with this. UK's open banking initiative comes out with this. Brazil's open finance initiative comes out with this. Estonia's X-Road and India's account aggregator framework are examples of this digital empowerment for citizens. And that is, to our mind, the way to go forward. Now, in India's, just to give you a little bit of India's example and India's own experience, digital public infrastructure has led to financial inclusion. It has led to delivery of services. It has led to prevention of monopolies. It has led to security, privacy, and in fact, it has led to great good governance. And there is, to my mind, as I said, DPI has really speeded up the economic development of India, and by providing a whole range of services to low income or middle income people. And as I said, 10 years ago, India was home to more. 10 years ago, India was home to more unbanked population than any other country in the world. And economists expected this to persist, this inequality to persist for hundreds of years. But what India did was to achieve, as the President of the General Assembly rightly said, to achieve 80% financial inclusion rate, which we would have achieved by 2064. Things moved much faster than expected because of digital public infrastructure. The World Bank has estimated that Aadhaar, that is digital public infrastructure, eKYC, reduced customer onboarding for Indian banks from close to $25 to less than 0.15 cents, making it economical for banks to open bank accounts. And that is why, because it became so easy to acquire customers, a new telecom company like Reliance Jio could acquire 450 million customers in India in 10 months' time. In 10 months' time, because of the power of digital identity. And the cost of acquisition of customer had fallen very sharply. Now, India is a country which is very young. Our average age of population is just 28. And therefore, digital public infrastructure poised to capture the demographic dividend and using the digital public infrastructure for the 1.5 billion people of India. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to say that how could India pack half a century of progress in less than a decade? This was possible because of identity. This was possible because of digital payments. It was possible because of digital trusted data. And to my mind, what has happened is that we built up, as was shown by ICAM, this model of trust of 5 sutras. How do you digital public infrastructure is based on 5 key principles. It has to be open. It has to be transparent. It has to have open APIs, as I said. It must be transparent. It must be citizen-centric. It must be auditable. And it must be interoperable. It must be interoperable. We are not saying, what we are in today's conference saying is do not replicate. We are saying do not replicate the India stack. We are only saying that there is an experience of India which can enable you to transform, the lives of your citizens. And therefore, based on your principles, use the citizen stack to really use MOSIP, the modular open source identity platform. Do not replicate what India has done. We are only propagating that the word we are using is modular, and therefore, if you want to transform lives of citizens like India has done, use the model based on your own country's ethos in a manner so that you can transform the lives of your citizens. Now, digital empowerment protection architecture provides a techno-legal framework. It provides a techno-legal framework for data collaboration in both public and personal data spaces. The data belongs to the citizen. The citizen gives right to the account aggregator to give that data in an encrypted manner to the service provider. And now we are using artificial intelligence to drive transformation. The AI model of Bhashni, where we have thousands of dialects. You can use any dialect, use the voice form to fill up any form of any scheme of the central government or the state government and get the benefit through your voice using the power of artificial intelligence on the digital public infrastructure to get access to any scheme. So it's the convergence of digital public infrastructure and artificial intelligence which is driving change. And that is, to our mind, will be transformational because the data will still be owned by the citizen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, India's G20 presidency, the G20 accepted the definition of digital public infrastructure. It accepted the concept of digital public infrastructure. Every country from Russia to China to United States accepted, all the emerging markets accepted the concept and the principle. All of them accepted the framework of digital public infrastructure. All of them said that for Global South, DPI is not just a tech upgrade, it's a leap towards inclusive and sustainable development based on the country's needs and circumstances, and that's the only way to transform lives of citizens. And ladies and gentlemen, it is our belief that in the coming years, we feel that the only way forward to ensure inclusive governance, to ensure universal access to essential services like finance, education, healthcare, DPI is the only way forward. DPI is the only way forward to strike a balance between innovation and regulation. And therefore, relying solely on big tech or exclusive regulation will not suffice to achieve these goals. The citizen stack will empower nations to build their own citizens' benefits tailored to their own needs, unique needs, while adhering to security, transparency, openness, auditability, and interoperability. This approach, to our mind, is crucial for solving global challenges and creating a more equitable and inclusive society. Ladies and gentlemen, it will allow nations to fast-track their economic development. It'll enable you to do good governance. It'll enable you to remove all leakages. It'll enable you to use cutting-edge technology. It'll enable you to provide health and financial inclusion and human development and create jobs and services and empower your citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, without digital public infrastructure and without citizen stack, there cannot be effective and speedy implementation of sustainable development goals. The sustainable development goals, the champions are the President of the General Assembly and the UNDP Administrator, Achim Steiner. And our request to them is that own the citizen stack, drive it vigorously so that you can transform the lives of citizens across the world. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir. I now request Dr. Srivatsa Krishna from the Indian Administrative Service to share a few insights on the future and pre-signs of India's citizen stack.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to be here. India missed the agricultural revolution. We missed the industrial revolution. We made it by the skin of our teeth to the IT revolution thanks to the Y2K problem. But the digital revolution, we are right up there, thanks in part to the visionary leadership provided by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has taken the India digital stack to heights which we never thought of when it was first started, and to the huge entrepreneurial energy which you see in the Indian youth of India. 65% of our population is below 35, and most of them are tech savvy. Let me step back a little. If you look at the evolution of the internet economies around the world, the US economy grew on the backs of ad tech. They give you a number of lovely things like Maps, Gmail. You and I can't imagine our lives without that. But you become the fodder. Your data gets sold in ways more than you would ever imagine. I've gone into the servers of the big tech, thanks to the work I'm doing at Stanford University right now. You'll be shocked at the kind of information they have about you. Privacy be damned. See the EU model. EU puts regulation at the center, not the citizen. As such, innovation there is almost dead. And then there's the Chinese model, which is a walled garden, where big tech companies now have government representatives on their board. And then there's the Indian model, which is the third way forward. And India's model is digital public infrastructure, where the citizen owns the data and the government is merely a consent manager, which gives citizens both empowerment and the ability to engage and at scale using DPI. As the Honorable G20 Sherpa brought it out so well, DPI is what we think of as the eighth continent. India is creating the eighth continent in a unique partnership of government, private sector, regulators, and a huge bunch of inspired volunteers like Sharad Sharma and his team, without which we would not have seen the India stack happen. So collective action is anyway very hard to bring. Imagine what it means to do it on population scale of 1.4 billion people. What does DPI do? In a simple way, have you ever tried using WhatsApp, iMessage, Telegram, and SMS? They never talk to each other. DPI is a low-cost, affordable, interoperable, free to public, free to use set of APIs. You can transform almost any two-sided marketplace. Take ride-hailing, take mobility, take food delivery. Anywhere where you have one side a buyer and one side a seller can be transformed by slapping DPIs on top of them. The DPI code itself is just about 2 or 3 pages in length and can be used on any legacy system. So and DPI, mind you, to my mind, is only a necessary condition. It's not the sufficient condition. So how did India miss all these revolutions and landed up being at the top of the digital one? It's very simple. We today, I don't know if you know this data point, India has 6 million knowledge or IT professionals, out of which 2.5 million are in the city I come from, Bangalore. Bangalore is not just the Silicon Valley of India or Asia, it's today the Silicon Valley of the world. We overtook Silicon Valley in the number of IT professionals last year, where there are 2 million and we have 2.5 million IT professionals. And that provides the bedrock on which all the wonderful startups and innovation is happening. On top of this, public infrastructure is being driven by private innovation. Talk to Amazon, talk to Google Pay, talk to PhonePe. PhonePe, owned by Walmart, spent $1 billion to re-domicile to India. They fought with their board and re-domiciled to India because they wanted to become a payments aggregator, which is what gives them access to the data. The data is the oil. Talking of oil, I don't know how many of you are aware, India's software exports today at $200 billion is more in many years of the last 5 than Saudi's oil exports, than France's transportation infrastructure export, than UK's chemical exports, than Brazil's food and agricultural exports. India is the digital engine to the world, which is what has enabled us to develop the DPI. I'm sure Sharad will speak at length about DPI. At Stanford, the research I'm doing is about the future of DPI. And I will point out 4 or 5 areas which would be of value to all your countries. I'm sure every country in the world is trying to produce new jobs. Here is what a startup called Karya in India has done. Karya gets uneducated, illiterate women in the villages to give their voice. They talk for an hour into a recording device. They get paid 300 rupees per day. With their consent, Karya shares their data with big tech, which is what is being used for developing ChatGPT and all the large language models. Where are they getting trained? They're getting trained on open source information available on the web, and they're getting trained by these voice samples being given with their consent. Think of it from their point of view. They make nothing in a day, and today they're getting 300 rupees as a gig worker. Second example I'll give you is account aggregator. Everywhere in the world, what we have is asset-based lending. No country, almost no country in the world has cash flow-based lending. For the first time, using the cash flow, let's assume you're a small business. You want to buy a pizza oven. Take your 12 months of cash flows, give consent to what is called an account aggregator. We have 410 of them in India. Almost every major financial institution is an account aggregator. On my phone, when I open up the UPI, you have a tag also for account aggregator. If you consent, they will give your data in an encrypted form to the financial institutions you select. Otherwise, so far, a small business owner will be running after a bank manager with folded hands, trying to get a small loan for his business. In this case, your data gets anonymized and is given to the account aggregator, who in turn passes it on to these financial institutions, who then bid for his business. Think about it. You are turning it on its head. Instead of you going as a loan seeker, here are the loan givers coming after you and offering you loans for whatever small needs you may have. Let me take the example of mobility. We have startup called Rapido, which is about to become a unicorn. Rapido does 1.8 million rides a day. It's motorcycle rides, car rides, auto rickshaw rides. The overall ride-sharing market in India, Uber, Ola, Rapido put together is 3 million. What is the difference that Rapido is bringing in? You see around the world, Google and check the newspapers, almost every country, major country, Uber drivers go on strike because Uber takes away 30-40% of their loans for the platform they are on. Here you have a platform model where the buyer's representative and the seller's representative is the same guy. Think about it. Whereas in Rapido, it's part of a network. They do it on a low-cost subscription of 19 to 29 rupees a day. 19 rupees to 29 rupees a day, and they can earn whatever they want on top of it. I'm being shown the watch by the Sutradhari, so I must end with one example, which is what we are looking at for the world. 200 billion is the size of the global VFX, animation, and special effects market. 200 billion. How many of you in this room are James Bond fans and have seen Skyfall? Skyfall, the house, is supposed to be where he grew up, and it is in Scotland. In reality, Skyfall was created in a studio by 20-year-old kids outside Bangalore, a studio which government of Karnataka seeded and was acquired later by Technivision, the world's largest animation company. Think of it, this is imagination of minds around the world collaborating. Now, Technivision, Steven Spielberg's Industrial Light and Magic are creating the United Nations of Animation in UK next month, where they are trying to bring together ideas, imagination, tech, and money together using open APIs. Why can't DPIs go that way? I stop here, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to India Stack, the Citizen Stack, and I hope every country here represented takes up at least one part of it and empowers the citizens of your country and leads towards the achievement of the UN SDGs. There is, as Amitabh Kant put it, no other way for you to reach there by 2030. Thank you very much.
Dr. Srivatsa Krishna. In this room, all of you, from notebooks to the standees, you see Citizen Stack everywhere. I'm sure all of you are wondering, what is Citizen Stack? And also, what is the science and philosophy of the Citizen Stack, the digital public infrastructure? To answer these key questions, I invite Sharad Sharma, who's the co-founder of iSpirit, to present the Citizen Stack. Yes, I know we're running about 15 minutes late. After this, we will break for tea, and we'll have a 15 minutes tea break at the Vienna Cafe just outside. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll cut down my presentation a little bit so that we can stay on time. But there'll be many opportunities to go deeper in these subsequent conversations, both today afternoon and in the one-to-one sessions, the bilateral sessions that are planned for tomorrow. So please feel free to keep your questions for that as we go forward. Really, lots is happening. And, I want to very quickly tell you how we got here, because that actually shapes where we are going to go. And this whole journey, believe it or not, started, like you mentioned, Geeta, with another person. Her name is Rajani. This lady that you see is actually a street vendor in Bangalore. Her real name is not Rajani, but we changed her name for privacy reasons. And back in 2012, 2013, we conceived of a financial inclusion system that would bring her into a formal lending model where she could get 400 rupees or 500 rupees, which, as you know, are $5, as a loan for a day, intra-day loan, right? So she takes the loan in the morning, buys something, sells it as a street vendor and retires the loan in the evening. She used to pay at that time 1% a day for this loan from the money lender. And our goal was that if we brought her into the formal system, she would, instead of paying roughly about 300% a year, she would pay less than 1/10 of that. So that was the motivation. Now, I can go into the details. It's a very complex slide, and I'm not going to do that. I just want you to look at one part of this. That is that this is a partnership, which many people here have talked about, a partnership with things in the outer circle, that is the digital public infrastructure, and what innovators are able to do in the inner circle. Those innovators can be private companies, and many of them are now unicorns that both Amitabh and Srivatsa talked about, or in many cases, they have been government agencies. And in the case of COVID, for example, those were government agencies. So what you are doing is enabling the innovators to use these public building blocks that are there to solve for the needs of the citizen. This is the essence of the idea behind India Stack, behind Citizen Stack, behind DPI. Now, this is not, of course, an Indian idea. This model of innovation has existed before, but it had never been brought into this form into the digital world. And this is the contribution of India. As we look back, that is what we'll remember as we go forward. So now, essentially, there are many, many building blocks outside. There's DigiLocker that was mentioned. There's account aggregator. Believe it or not, all of these came to solve for Rajni. But simply put, if you were to simplify this, you can reduce them to 3 buckets. One is to do with flow of people. Second is to do with flow of money. And the third is to do with flow of information. And what is happening here is that by creating digital public infrastructure to mediate these 3 flows, you are now able to reimagine citizen services, market services in a way that is not possible in any other innovation model. So this is really the essence of what India Stack is about. I'm not going to go through this slide. I mean, it was very eloquently covered by Amitabh here. He talked about various numbers. He talked about how innovators have taken advantage of this. India, as you know, has the second largest number of startup unicorns in India. They started from a Startup India policy that was ironically created by Mr. Amitabh Kant in 2016. 40% of the Indian startup unicorns are relying on the India Stack today. So there are SDG benefits of this. There are innovation benefits, and those benefits can accrue to the innovators. But I also want to point out that there are economic benefits. Last year, our chief economic advisor in the annual economic survey indicated that India will see up to 100 basis points faster growth, economic growth, for the foreseeable future because of the DPIs and the India Stack that we have. It is also important to note that India's ability to invest in lots of areas, health, education, physical infrastructure, has improved dramatically because of the formalization that Rajni and Geeta, by bringing them into the formal system, they are able to pay taxes which they were not able to pay conveniently earlier. And so therefore, India's tax to GDP ratio has gone up in a phenomenal way. And we are now at 17.1%. We're roughly about half of that, 10 years ago. So there are many benefits of being able to do that, and we've talked about them already. Now, what happened is that this conversation, while we are having today, there's a version of this conversation that actually started in 2018, where some of the countries that are even present here, Sri Lanka is here, Ethiopia is here, Morocco is here, they were in some sense early adopters. they started evaluating and talking about whether this is the right approach to take. And I want to acknowledge those conversations because those conversations were very important in formulating what you are seeing as India Stack today. And those conversations talked not only about the good parts of DPIs, but they also talked about what are the possibly problematic areas of DPI. And they relate to the fact that is there public money to invest in DPIs? What happens to regulation? How do you deal with those regulations? And so early adopters that started that conversation in 2018 have played a very important role to bring us where we are today. There was also a creation of MOSIP, an institution. We have Naga from MOSIP here. Sanjay Anantram and Naga have been instrumental in bringing MOSIP to life. They'll talk about that later today. And a DPG alliance was set up with Norway, with UNDP back in 2018. And these kind of efforts that started many years ago concretize this ability to look at this system where every country can actually choose the citizen stack that is appropriate for them. And I want to emphasize this. This is not a session where a cookie cutter approach is being offered to you, where somebody is saying, this works for India, therefore you should do the same. What is being told to you is that these are the learnings from India, these are the building blocks that are there from India, and if you really follow the design thinking process that India followed, then you will be able to conceive of the right type of citizen stack that you need for yourself as you go forward. And that is working. That is working actually very well. MOSIP alone is in 17 countries. We have many promoters that have come of DPI. You know, it includes Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It includes Co-Develop. For a long time, World Bank has been doing it under the ID for D program. So many people have gone into this movement to be able to take it forward in a very big way. Now, why do I share all this history with you? Because in this, as something starts to proliferate, you also begin to see a risk. When something goes mainstream, problems also appear. There are forces that emerge that begin to dilute the underlying principles that actually brought that success to the fore. Because there are reasons for doing that, and often commercial reasons to doing that. This has happened before. Many of you know Web 1.0, and you will hear later today from Dame Professor Wendy Hall, who is one of the co-founders of the web with Tim Berners-Lee. What they conceived is not the internet that we have today. That's what Srivatsa talked about, where there is an advertising-based ecosystem where we are the product. That is not the web that had been conceived back in the mid-90s. So we lost our way on the web. That has happened to open source. There is classical open source, there is corporate open source. Corporate open source is nothing like what classical open source is supposed to be. Even in the green movement, I have a young daughter, she points to me all the time. She says, Papa, this company is greenwashing. I didn't know what this term is until I started hearing from her. She said, hey, don't pay attention to this company, they're just doing greenwashing. Because the principles of green are sometimes hijacked by players because they want to promote a version that's good for them, not good for the ecosystem. So this brings us to an important point that we are placing before you. We are taking this extra effort to codify the principles that will underpin a healthy DPI ecosystem in the future. These principles, these guiding principles, are very important. And these guiding principles for us are, we call them sutras. Many of you do yoga, and the yoga that you do is yoga asana. Those are the physical exercises that you do. As you know, they are based on principles of life, and those principles are called yoga sutras. So we are calling them DPI Sutras. It's a new term, but you can think of it as DPI principles. And why are we codifying them at this moment in time? Because at this moment in time, as we go from 17 to perhaps 70 countries using DPI in some form or the other, we are in this dangerous territory where there will be forces that will subtly, quietly, without all of us realizing, force us to dilute these principles as we go forward. We will cover these principles later today, and we will discuss with you in the bilateral sessions that we have tomorrow as to which are the ones that you should really focus on and be careful about. But obviously the first one at the 12 o'clock position is the most important. It is about citizen centricity. All this that has happened is for Geeta, for Rajani, and it is citizen centricity that is important. Citizen centricity and maintaining her power with respect to the state, her power with respect to the market players is only possible if data is handled well. And so therefore privacy, as many people have pointed out, is a very, very important element. Second, very eloquently put about WhatsApp, WeChat, iMessage, they don't interoperate. Interoperability is very, very important. So that's going to be true. How should you regulate digital? You can't regulate digital by conventional, traditional regulation approaches. So the new approach of regulating digital is to use techno-legal regulation. And what that means is you use public policy and public technology together to make that happen. Finally, and you must make sure that as you do all of these things, we don't get into an era of monopolization. Because DPI is an antithesis to monopolization, antithesis to corporatization. And at all times, you must have dashboards that allow you to check for yourself that you are, by accident, not slowly getting into that area at all. And then finally, and in fact, very importantly, India believes we have a responsibility, and a major responsibility, that if we offer a building block to you, or for that matter, any other country offers a building block to you, they have an obligation to make sure that is not weaponizable. And I would suggest to you that MOSIP, that many of you are using here, is designed not to be weaponizable. MOSIP may be sitting in an engineering institution in Bangalore, but it is designed that no matter what happens, India or that engineering institution cannot weaponize that, so that the country that is using MOSIP regrets it later and says, hey, why did I sign up for this? You know, when I signed up for this, I was on good terms with India. I'm not in good terms with India, and therefore they have power over what I'm doing. It is designed to not allow for that power to exist. So these are the sutras that are important. We wish to lead by example. We want this fidelity to the sutras to be an important conversation as we go forward. We want to make sure citizen centricity is maintained. We believe there is a place to invest in that brand so that anybody's DPI, anywhere in the world, can be included in the citizen stack. And if it is included in the citizen stack, you know some smart people have looked at it to ensure that it is compliant with these principles and sutras that we are talking about. And last but not the least, build a community with early adopters. We have Ethiopia here, we have Philippines, we have Sri Lanka. There are many early adopters, and they have to all come together to take the responsibility to preserve the integrity of this revolution that is happening before us. So please embrace this as we go forward. Embrace this with a spirit of trust. Embrace this to accelerate your SDGs. Embrace it to reignite growth in your own countries, to make your innovators successful in a way that would not be possible otherwise. Embrace it. Embrace it now. This is the time to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharad. We now break for tea and we can reconvene in the room at 11:45. Refreshments and breakfast are available just outside at Vienna Cafe. On the house. Sorry, I missed saying that breakfast and refreshments on the house.
who told me about it.
Nobody said this was, I was sitting there. Okay. Thank you so much. Very kind. You can keep it.
But that's an extra, my goal was to.
But you can still ask.
Because we also have some kind of come out. Yeah. The most important is whenever you know. I said here, right? This is the exact now they did the things so well. So now they can recognize it. They can. We're still working with it. But just check it. It was not during the Beacon guys are based in Paris. Not Beacon. Sorry, Mistral is based in Paris. Mistral is based in Paris. It's France.
Ma'am?
Can you show me what it is?
Ma'am?
It's two breakouts.
Do we know who's sitting here? Is there a PR here? Who places? No, now these panelists are sitting there, actually. No, these three are we have removed. We are removing it. Number who's sitting here? Those sitting, that panelist. No, ma'am, who's sitting here? Then you can put panel here. Some is the panel. Somebody is there. Do you know who's sitting here? There's these are not PRs. So that's it. Appeal standard is has left and PG has left. So we have now citizens can everywhere. Correct, ma'am. So these chairs are empty.
Yes, so you have the
And then they will move. PR and these people will move. In the front, Sharad. So this can all be 500 and they will have to inside. So we don't even move this. This can be your whoever's panelist. Yeah, panelist we have to put panelist.
Right.
He said in that side also. Remember Madhumita?
But it is not going to
We'll leave the speaker here, let them move, then they will put this one. When they move inside. This is Madhumita.
and then I just need to run to the.
Actually, इसमें जो आएंगे इंटरव्यू सारे नहीं हैं ना?
At 2, I need to be at the commission and then pass by the graduation of the printing. Meaning I need to leave here at like 1:45. Not even. Because it's on 42nd.
Only others said these people have left, like PG and they have left. They said chairs are same. They will be sitting the same people.
Hi, how are you?
I will think you are the panelists.
Yeah, I need to leave here.
Yeah, you can give me the panelist PR. And then you can go.
You which is the
This sounded to me, I think.
what the panels you have.
So three, all five are shown. And then three other panels we have to put.
You can tell, justice also part of the time.
The first panel. So you can sit here.
Yeah.
Like you are very
and then
he
we
is
can
sitting
tell
already here.
He's already here.
And then other five people you can
See him.
Honestly, I think I might need to see this.
What are the 5 people?
three and other five people.
Because I may not be able to do otherwise.
I have got their names. Let them come. Once they come, they will give me.
I'll suggest something.
Yeah.
I hope you had enjoyed the session, and most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the refreshments outside. And yes, and there's definitely more to follow during lunch break. I just wanted to point out that there are country bilateral sessions happening at the permanent mission of India in their office. There are forms kept in front of you. I request my colleague Jasminder Singh to go around and collect the forms for the countries who are interested in participating in one-on-one bilateral discussions with us tomorrow, in order for us to start the discussions in designing your citizen stack for your citizens. There is a small change in the agenda. Mr. Parmeshwaran Iyer unfortunately couldn't be with us because he's fallen ill, and so we will continue the agenda with the rest. I now have the honor of having amongst us today Ambassador André Verdier. He's a French ambassador for digital affairs. With His Excellency Verdier's expertise and France's key partnership with India on digital public infrastructure, I invite His Excellency for a discussion on Citizen Stack Data with Trust. Your Excellency, India has definitely learnt a lot from France, has been inspired by France and your work with regard to digital commons. So on that note, I think it'll be a great partnership that we look forward between India and France as a continued partnership. And this discussion will only further display to the world on how India and France are learning and progressing as far as digital public infrastructure is concerned. So, sir, as a first question, DPI emphasizes openness, interoperability, transparency, and user centricity. How do you see these principles differ from the traditional digital solutions, and why are they essential for building trust and preventing issues like data monopolization and weaponization?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Excellencies, colleagues. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very honored to be there. Maybe I have to contest two assumptions. First, no, India was not inspired by France. You did your own way alone. I know this very well. But I think that we did recognize each other very easily, because this idea that we need to design good public infrastructure to authorize the emergence of a good society, well-regulated market, but not with a big legal burden, but with resources that we did design and share carefully, is an idea that we can recognize. And so we did recognize and appreciate each other, but you did your own way alone. I have to tell to my other friends that no, European innovation is not dead. Mistral AI is one of the biggest and most promising AI companies today. The great Falcon project from United Arab Emirates was built on a public research large language model born in the CNRS, in the French CNRS. So we are not dead, and you might not know, but you are using, and I'm coming to your question, on a daily basis, European innovations like TCP/IP, the ancestor of TCP/IP, like HTML, like Bluetooth, like MySQL, like Linux, like the Wi-Fi. And that was one important way of the digital story. The idea is that we need open standards to build a better world based on rationality, on cooperation, and transparency. And maybe it was a bit a French idea. I discovered recently, when I became a diplomat, that the first international organization in the world and the oldest agency of the UN, the ITU, was established in Paris in 1865. In Paris. Because at this time, those enlightened minds, they thought telegraph seems to be a promising technology. We should organize ourselves. We should organize the international community to be sure that we will be able to exchange international telegraph without anyone at the center that could control the system. So for this, we need to establish shared open standards. And for this, we need a body where the international community will work together to design and share open standards. So it was named in 1865 the International Telegraph Union, and it became the International Telecom Union And this is the oldest agency of the UN, as we all know in this room. And that's one of the important roots of the digital revolution. I think that people tend to overestimate the Silicon Valley and the startup track, which is the second track. And it is a very important track too. At this time, it was also a political view. People wanted to unleash innovation while empowering the people. So they did conceive the personal computing to share the power. And both, not just the Valley, both good open standards plus personal computing did unleash this innovation stream that did change the world for a lot of good things, of course. Access to innovation, access to information, knowledge, self-organizing communities, but with also bad things, because of course, when you share power with everyone, you share also power with evil actors. So cybercrime, rogue states, and were an emerging concern, and today we have to face more and more concerns, cyber terrorism, cybercrime, whatever you want, disinformation, etc. And we have to fight another risk, which is the rise of big, huge monopolies. And if we come back to probably the next big things, AI, could you imagine a world with just 3 big companies leading the AI movement? Do you want your countries, your companies, your cars, your cities, your smart cities to ask permission to 3 companies? We cannot afford this. And the brilliant Indian move, and that's why I did admire a lot, because to be frank, we had some prototypes of digital stacks. We named this government as a platform, we named this digital commons, we named this, there were various names. Even in France we had. But the idea to have this so complete, precise, with such a brilliant architecture, with real deployment strategies, that is maybe the most singular Indian approach. It was put in by India at a level that we have never seen anywhere else. So, but this idea for me, for France and for Europe, that's the only way, the most promising way to rebalance the digital revolution. Because if you want to preserve the open, free, neutral, decentralized internet, and that's one important asset for humanity. If you want to give to the people, to the nations, to the people in democracies, the right to take decisions. For example, in Europe, we want to protect privacy, we want to forbid racism online, and anti-Semitism online. If we cannot implement this, we are not democracies anymore. We are just weak people. So we need sovereignty. So if you want to preserve the freedom of the internet itself, if you want to preserve the freedom of democracy through sovereignty, and if you want to promote the market and business innovation, you need this small layer of public services in between everything. And for me, that's the answer to a lot of concerns we have. So I don't know if this is new, as your question asked, because maybe that's a comeback to the first vision of internet. Let's build a better society through openness, decentralization, etc. But what we did learn during the journey is that we need states, governments, and public services in the loop. If we let the market do it alone, you will have to face real bad actors and giant monopolies, and that's not the way we want for.
Thank you so much for that. One thing I would definitely say from the introduction that you gave, Your Excellency, is that the foundational infrastructure like telecom, internet has definitely helped with digital public infrastructure. But 2 more that you mentioned really resonates with us, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, which has become like oxygen for us, and we really appreciate Europe's innovation as far as these are concerned in order for us to provide the foundational architecture for us to be able to build digital public infrastructure over that. On that note, I would wanted to ask you on the second point to say, there is rapid evolution of digital technologies at this particular point of time. And what role does techno-legal approach, which is an India's way of approaching, integrating DPIs and plays in enhancing controls and agency over the protection of data?
I don't know where to start. 6 years ago, before being a diplomat, I was the head of the IT department for the French government. And we tried to change a bit the administration itself. That was a challenge. And with my team, we did theorize that if you want to succeed, you need to unify the legal way plus the hacker way. So usually we try to change the text, the norms, and plus we did prototype in a fast prototyping strategy to prove that it was not so difficult, and if they don't listen to us, we will do it alone. So this idea is not so far from the techno-legal approach. And 5 years ago, when I've met the guys in iSpirit in charge of the DIPA project, Digital Data Empowerment and Privacy Architecture, he told me, you European, you are brilliant with your GDPR. This idea is that we should build the data exchange, build it on the consent of the consumer, is a great idea. But, Siddharth told me, why did you build such a burden for your companies? Why did you build such a big, heavy legal superstructure? And I have to recognize, and that's a point for you, that for example, the AI Act, that's a great text, but that's also a 4,050-page text. We should not do this. And he told me, why did you build such a burden instead of conceiving an infrastructure to unleash innovation and to seize the opportunity? If you can share the consent and retake the consent and take it back, that's a resource for innovation. And the techno-legal approach, yes, that's a brilliant. We should always think like this. I want to send the economy in some direction. I should conceive a way to make it easy and more easy. Plus, of course, some rules to be sure that everyone will go in the same direction. And that's much more efficient, and that's also more happiness for the public service, because if you come with resources instead of coming with limitation, people welcome you. So that's also something for the society itself. The government as a resource is better than the government as someone that does forbid. So that's something we have to learn, all of us, because that's not spontaneous for bureaucracies, but always things. Let's think about what Siddharth said. You have a principle, consent. Think in terms of capacities. Try to make it a resource. Maybe I conclude with this. There is a big concern in Europe that's child access to pornography. So we discovered that maybe 55% of children less than 10 years, they did see pornographic websites. So we need age verification. But or you conceive a global surveillance society where you see every adult going to pornographic websites, or you conceive an infrastructure to separate the age from the ID. And if you do this, you build a resource for also alcohol market, for gambling market. That's a resource for innovation, and it should be one European techno-legal approach. Let's conceive a way to allow people to know the age without knowing the ID. If we do this, we give a lot of resources to the global economy.
Thank you so much on that. I'd like to move to my other point, like when we are talking about partnership within countries over here, cross-border data governance is something that is definitely of importance. And what steps can be taken to implement data free flow with trust as far as cross-border governance is concerned?
So I try to be brief. I did join the French government 10 years ago, first to lead the open data policy. So I work with open data for a long time. Two things. First, when Japan did propose free flow of data with trust, we France, we did agree, but we said first, we had to define together what is trust. Trust is privacy, obviously, but not just privacy. And from my perspective, for example, if we share knowledge, if we share data, if we share capacities, we have to pay attention to avoid lock-in, recapture, predation. If I share all the knowledge of France and that Google alone can use it, I lost. I didn't create value or economy or prosperity or nothing. So, for example, preserving the commons, fighting for openness, is a part of the trust we need if we start to share data. sharing data is for the global good. It's not just for two companies making money. So that's very important. And here, because I have a 10-year experience, I think that most people tend to think in terms of white or black. Can we share this or not? And tech guys, they could convince much more approaches. We could convince personal computing. I've seen brilliant researches in Bangalore. I could allow a researcher to access to health data without taking the data on his computer. So he makes a calculation, he teaches the AI, he trains the AI model, but he did never see private data. You know, I take my model, I train my model, and I come back, but I did not see the person. So organizing personal computing, organizing temporary access, traceability of the access to know who did access to the data, asymmetric cooperation. We could conceive a very brilliant framework to use the data while preserving other fundamental rights like privacy, intellectual property, national security, and whatever you can imagine. And sometimes I worry a bit because we don't invite enough tech guys, engineers, architects in those conversations. That's always lawyers' conversation about legal principles, and we could do much better. That's a proposition. We could do something together.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. These were really insightful, and I take the conversations forward now. Dame Wendy Hall, Regius Professor of Computer Science and Director, Web Science Institute, University of Southampton, and one of the creators of Web 1.0, couldn't be amongst us today, but has a key message to share with us on establishing standards in data for building trustworthy artificial intelligence. Let us listen in.
Hello, my name's Wendy Hall. I'm a Professor of Computer Science at the University of Southampton in the UK, and thank you so much for inviting me to address you this morning. I'm ever so sorry I couldn't accept the invitation to fly to New York to be with you. I can't believe I turned down an invitation to go to New York, but I did because of my diary constraints, and I'm just pleased that I can offer this video message to encourage you in what you're doing and to express my support for how important it is for the future developments of AI. I've been visiting India for many decades, and I love the country and I love going there, and as part of my activities I developed quite a deep relationship with IIIT Bangalore, particularly around the web science agenda, the socio-technical study of the web, that I helped to grow the group there and have been working with them on web science now for a couple of decades possibly. And as part of that, I was introduced to Prof. Rajagopalan. And he, on one of my visits there, asked me if I would be willing to join the advisory board of MOSIP. Now, I didn't know what MOSIP was at the time. I didn't know much about the Aadhaar and the India stack, and I wasn't quite sure. But as it was explained to me, what was happening, and I thought this was really interesting, and it was a journey I would like to get involved with, a project I'd like to get involved with, and I'm so glad I joined the MOSIP journey. I've learned so much, and one, I haven't got any PowerPoint slides, but this is my book on 4 internets, which I was writing at the time this all started, and we dedicate a chapter in 4 internets to the India. We call India the swing state because of the influence that you're having on the world that doesn't have big tech companies and hasn't had a lot of government investment in the past in the internet, and you managed to roll it out to 1.4 billion people using the Aadhaar number. And Nandan Nilekhani, when I met him, he said, India should be in there as the inclusive internet in the book. And I do agree with him in many ways. What you've done is included everybody in India in the internet. everyone has access, and then you've built the stack with the digital public infrastructure rollout and the unified payment interface, which is absolutely amazing. That someone who can't read or write can interact and sell their goods in the marketplace, or, digitally. I just think that's amazing. And the Supreme Court, of course, has ruled that privacy holds privacy as a human right to protect people's privacy and security as they use the internet in India. And this sets an example to the rest of the world. And I was so excited when MOSIP got, in November, MOSIP declared it had its 100 million citizen registered on the MOSIP platform, which is quite amazing. I do worry, of course, that some of the countries that are using MOSIP are not quite as respectful of human rights and privacy as we might like them to be. And so the ethics of how MOSIP is rolled out, I am keen to get involved with to help put the checks and balances in there. But in terms of, as my title was, establishing standards and data for building trustworthy AI, of course, the era of AI we're in is totally data-driven, and the need to develop trustworthy AI requires us to make sure our data is not biased, it's fair, it's as accurate as it can be, I firmly believe you need a digital ID to be able to do anything in this new world. And many people in say the UK and the US would argue that digital ID is all about giving governments ability to be able to look at what you're doing on the internet. It's all about surveillance. Well, I think it's all about security, actually. And I think India sets the example that says, here is a way to do this that does protect your privacy and gives everyone the same rights to be able to access the internet. So as we go forward, we need to develop the interoperable standards for data and AI that will make this work at a global level. I can't see everybody adopting the ADHAR, but I think we need to have interoperability between the different systems of digital IDs that do emerge. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited to be asked to be a member of the United Nations AI Advisory Body, because the body is looking at exactly what type of global systems we need to make sure AI is governed fairly and for the good of humanity. And as I said, we can learn so many lessons from the way India's done things. Sharad Sharma, of course, is on that the AI board as well. So together we can help influence with the other people that understand how these things work, so that we can develop trustworthy AI that is good for humanity. We're also looking not just at standards, many other things as risks and safety, but also capacity building for the global south, which is something I'm absolutely passionate about. And this is something that we'll put in the recommendations that are going to come out in our report, which will be published in the summer. So, as I said, India has a really important role to play here, and its influence on how this plays out in the future is really important. So I wish you all the best for your conference. And again, I'm so sorry I can't be with you, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk.
Moving on, we have a first panel discussion with us today. We have case studies demonstrating on how components of citizen stack like MOSIP, modular open source identity platform, are helping countries such as Ethiopia and Philippines tailor DPI to their specific needs and achieve digital sovereignty. I invite David Mulugeta Dame, Head of Strategy, National ID Program from Ethiopia, Fred Sotelo Solesta, Deputy National Statistician at Philippine Statistics Authority, and our panel moderator, Mr. Nagarajan Santanam, Chief Dissemination Officer, MOSIP and OpenG2P. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, His Excellencies and distinguished guests. Thank you so much for providing this opportunity. We have been hearing about MOSEP from morning, so I thought we can run a quick video so that, before I get into the panel, the whole forum can understand what MOSEP, at a high level at least. Madhumita, can you please?
Research reveals that a staggering 850 million people globally lack any form of official proof of identity. Without proper and verifiable ID, access to rights and services becomes impossible, leading to a host of economic and societal challenges. The modular open source identity platform was built in 2018 to address an urgent global call for inclusive, secure, and customizable digital identity systems across the globe. As of February 2024, 110 million people have officially been registered on MOSEP-based ID systems. MOSEP was incubated at the International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore. A not-for-profit project, MOSEP is led by a dedicated team of experts and supported by an extensive global community of developers, academics, and technology partners. MOSEP is funded and supported by philanthropic agencies working towards various social causes. In a short 6 years, MOSEP finds itself in various stages of adoption across Asia Pacific, Africa, and Latin America, helping citizens gain better access to rights and services through digital ID. MOSEP's partnerships with countries extend well beyond providing a technology platform. The project also supports country governments in the design, management, and maintenance of the established systems. The MOSEP technology and global dissemination teams, with members on ground in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, work closely with governments and national bodies to support the adoption of MOSEP, build capacity in local staff, and advise administration on best practices for the future. MOSEP technology is built on a bedrock of good principles and globally accepted standards. With its modular open source architecture, MOSEP is human-centric, secure by design, and geared towards inclusive solutions. MOSEP adopting countries can build and own flexible digital ID systems. Having established a successful identity platform, the MOSEP team invested additional effort in developing modules for the steps beyond registration itself, beginning to address the steps of ID usage and service delivery. 2 additional modules were developed and launched, allowing countries to seamlessly authenticate identity and usher in use cases in the financial, healthcare, education, and agricultural sectors, among others. In continued commitment to contributing to global standards, MOSEP is also leading an effort with IEEE to establish secure biometric collection standards. MOSEP is a proud founding member of the Open Wallet Foundation, joining an important open source movement focused on digital wallets and verifiable credentials. MOSEP also works closely with multi-stakeholder initiatives to develop interoperability among digital public goods. Notably, the MOSEP community and the Ethiopian National ID Program have co-developed an Android registration client on MOSEP, a mobile client that will allow registrations to reach citizens in remote and low network regions. The MOSEP team has also collaborated with the government of Cambodia to tailor usernames and custom handles to specific needs using eSignet. MOSEP is dedicated to building and expanding a vibrant global ecosystem of technology partners. This allows adopting countries to choose from a host of pre-compliant and integrated technology solutions, system integrators, and biometric device providers. With a newly updated partner program, an active MOSEP marketplace, and a new MOSEP Advanced Compliance Program, the project is currently in varying stages of partnership, integration, and compliance with over 90 biometric device manufacturers and solution providers. In addition, the project has active partnerships with 17 major system integrators, with many more in the pipeline. MOSEP's commitment to fostering a space for academic research is illustrated through its partnerships with 6 leading research institutions, including research on inclusion, security, and privacy, and engagements in capacity-building initiatives. The project has been working with multiple global DPGs to create a diverse stack of solutions for countries adopting digital ID systems. with Inji and eSignet becoming available as new products to enable easy authentication and verification, residents can more easily access various rights and services. The launch and subsequent demonstrations of these modules at global events signaled MOSIP's dedication to putting digital ID to use after their creation and distribution. We at MOSIP look forward to continuing work with our country, technology, and academic partners towards our common goal of empowering lives around the world with digital ID. Through regular convening, in-depth discussion and collaboration, and building connections amongst a diverse set of experts, we hope to work as a part of this community towards a future where inclusive digital public infrastructure will lead to empowering lives, one unique ID at a time.
Thank you so much. I know it was a bit lengthy, but we wanted to play this so that people understand the context of MOSIP. Mr. Fred, the national ID system of Philippines is called PhilSys. Like Sharad said, Philippines took MOSIP and they white labeled it as PhilSys. So Philippines has 110 million population, right? And currently 86 million has been registered using MOSIP. And we all know that Philippines has 7,500 islands. It is quite a distributed nation. How did you achieve 53 million in 1 year, that too during COVID time? I mean, that was a showcase, right? Fred, please share your experiences on that.
Thank you, Naga. First of all, to our excellencies and everyone present here today, good noon. First, I would like to thank the Permanent Mission of India for inviting the Philippines to share our experience in the adoption of MOSIP for the national identification in the Philippines. So, as Naga said, PhilSys is to Philippines as Aadhaar is to India. PhilSys stands for Philippine Identification System. You know, in 2021, at the height of the pandemic, our marching order as the implementing agency, which is the Philippine Statistics Authority, is to pursue the start of the rollout of the National Identification System, or the PhilSys. So it was very daunting task of really doing it at the height of the pandemic. But given that the Philippine Statistics Authority is not new in harnessing massive civilian operation like the census. In 2020, we conducted, as usual, the census in the Philippines for the 109 or 10 million citizens in September 2020. So we are very familiar on how to harness our resources, including the support of the local government units. As you will all know, that without the support of local government units, you could not be successful in any massive civilian operation. Considering what Naga said, that the Philippines is an archipelagic country wherein you have to navigate, aside from the three major islands of the Philippines, small islands, municipalities, and barangays. So the implementation of PhilSys during that time will not be confined in fixed registration centers. At a certain point, you should go out to reach out this marginalized sector living in far-flung areas like mountainous areas and island barangays, because most of those citizens are the one really in need of identification. And as a result of these efforts of the Philippine Statistics Authority in the Philippines, we were able to bridge the gap between the digital gap and the financial inclusion that is needed, or one of the objective of the PhilSys. So in 2021 alone, of the 53 million registration, 7.5 million new bank accounts were opened. And most of that are low-income individuals. So 7.5 million were given access to financial inclusion because of the registration alone. And as of now, we stand at 86 million registration in the entire country. So it is the last mile within, it is also quite difficult doing the last mile because you would not be registering in volume the numbers that when you visit certain areas. But we're still pursuing because we're targeting that by the end of the year, we will be having the 92 million registration in the Philippines. So, and when we started in 2018, even if MOSIP was just an infant, maybe in terms of that platform, we collaborate with them. We send people to Bangalore to study the MOSIP. And as of today, really the platform has gone very far. And that would allow other countries that would like to adopt MOSIP to reap the benefits of the early adopters of that platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. David, the question is for you. We know Ethiopia is 120 million population. Your foundational ID, you white labeled it and named it as FIDA, right? It's a very interesting journey in Ethiopia, right? Like Sharad said, it is not India or MOSIP that we position. It's the value and that the country should really get out of the DPI really matters. And Ethiopia is a live example for that. Ethiopia didn't come to MOSIP. They downloaded the source code because MOSIP being open source, they went to the GitHub, they downloaded it, they played around with it, they found defects, they fixed the defects, and then they came back to us and signed the MOU. What made you to really choose MOSIP, David?
Thank you, Naga. Thank you, Team India, for having me and obviously share this experience from Ethiopia. I just want to provide a quick background on how we got to digital ID and then the MOSIP story as well. So as you know, just to provide a quick context, Ethiopia has about 40% of its population with no form of identity, so no ID. And we also have about 60% of our population unbanked, on top of that, about 30 to 40% of our businesses are in the informal economy. So they're not recognized, they're not in the tax net. So digital ID was definitely something we sought for to ensure that we ensured digital inclusion for our 120 million people. And so it's with that in mind that we went out shopping for some sort of identity solution. Obviously, Ethiopia had also suffered from proprietary solutions and systems that didn't necessarily provide the best fit-for-purpose solution in the past. So one was the issue of cost. They were very prohibitively expensive. And then also number two, we had limited capacity to consume them and run with them. And so we are actively looking for solution, one that was open source, modular, free, and that can help us kind of customize to the specific needs of Ethiopia. So 3 years ago, as Naga said, our team members simply went to GitHub, downloaded the source code for MOSIP, played around with it, and of course they fixed some issues, they customized it, and they called it FIDA. FIDA, by the way, means value add in 4 languages, including Amharic, Swahili, and Arabic. And so we ended up doing a small pilot before contacting the MOSIP team, because now we knew when we were about to scale that we needed the support of the team in Bangalore to help us scale. So what did MOSIP bring to us in the process? One was the fact that MOSIP was easy to consume. We were limited. We had, I would say, a few engineers working at the time on this digital ID system. And so we found MOSIP easy to consume. It offered the best solution in terms of flexibility, adaptability, interoperability. I mean, we also had our own legacy systems in Ethiopia, and they didn't talk to each other. And a lot of institutions had invested a lot in terms of data centers, application systems, and softwares, which never talk to each other. And that was not the best way to move forward, especially when we had a huge and ambitious plan to do a digital transformation in Ethiopia. So that's how we ended up with MOSIP. And it's been an incredible journey. We constantly talk with the MOSIP team in Bangalore. And I'm also happy to announce that we've hosted two of the major events that were seen today in Addis Ababa this year. The DPGA and the MOSIP conference was hosted in Addis Ababa, and we will continue to be part of the community and hosting more. By way of update, we started with a pilot of 100,000. We are now in 2 years at 4.6 million, and we hope to reach 90 million in the next 2 years. That may seem like a very ambitious target from where we are, but we know we can achieve it, and I will come to how we plan to achieve it in the subsequent conversations.
Thank you, David. Knowing you guys, I'm sure you will do it. Fred, the question is to you. Any foundational ID implementation in any country is a journey, right? The problems in one country is different from the others. So, as part of the journey, when you did 10 million, 15 million, you understood that one of your print solutions was not working well, and because of which you couldn't print the cards and stuff, so you wanted some alternate solution. So the lifesaver was the e-fill ID solution, which was named by you guys. So do you want to talk about that? I mean, how it really solved your problem and transformed your journey?
Thank you. In a way, the problem with the implementation of the national ID in the Philippines, we were a victim of our own success. We registered rapidly during that time in 2021. We registered around 350 to 400,000 daily registration. And on an end-to-end process, the system could only process around 200,000. And even the card production is having less. So as a country with citizens more focused really on the issuance of the ID, the mindset is not yet fully on the concept of digital identity within, like in India, the number Aadhaar is anchored on a number. In the Philippines, the PhilSys is anchored on the issuance of ID card. So there were delays in the card production in which it could not cope up really with the registration. So we come up with with a novel solution, the e-fill ID. Of course, we will not be able to do that. Our team, the IT team, without also the support of of MOSIP. We burn candles really to develop that the solution, the e-fill ID. At first, it was thought to be just a stopgap measure to give credential to the citizen while waiting for the ID. But as a result, that process, the digital card service, in our PhilSys implementation using MOSIP, allow us to strengthen further the security feature of our QR code. So we were able to embed a photo in the QR code in which also Ethiopia copied the implementation of the Philippines in increasing the security of the QR code. So it is really a game changer wherein we now position that as when you register in the PhilSys, in a matter of 5 minutes, you'll get the credential. So, and later we are collaborating also with another open source platform, which is the OpenCRBS, because we want to integrate PhilSys right after the vital event, which is birth. So that is the very purpose of that, is really for all the citizens at a relatively young age, they will be more or less the concept of the digitalization will be in place in their mind, so that it would be easier really to change the outlook of a nation from a country which is fascinated with cards to transition it into a more digital mindset. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. This is the power of open source and collaboration, right? I mean, I'm very happy to say that the e-fill ID module that we developed for Philippines, we co-created, it is now part of core MOSIP. So people could really take it and do with it. David, the question is to you. the NIDP CEO's name is Yodahe, Mr. Yodahe. He is my very good friend. And whenever Yodahe calls me at 11 o'clock in the night, I'm, oh my God, So he's going to ask something very complicated. So he calls me one night and says, Naga, as part of our digital strategy, we want to develop a Android registration client because we feel that's the way to do. You have been telling, you have been having this Android registration client development in your roadmap for more than a year. We need it immediately. I said, what do you mean by immediately? Say probably he was kind enough. He said in 15 days' time. He was also kind enough to say that, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you like that. I'm going to give 2 dedicated people from my team to work with MOSIP to make it happen. See, this is the real power of co-creation and co-development, right? Which an open source gives to you. Can you just talk a little bit more about that, David? It is live now, so which means, any country which adopts MOSIP will get it as part of core MOSIP. Do you want to talk about it?
Yes. I think that also goes to the heart of MOSIP. It's a true collaborative platform, and there is a community around it. And of course, as Ethiopia, we feel quite privileged to be part of this community and actually contribute something to the development of MOSIP. And as you said, the 2 specific areas where we actually co-developed a functionality bit in MOSIP was one, the Android client, and this really came out of necessity. Ethiopia, as we're doing a digital rollout, we're trying to leapfrog a number of digital efforts. So that comes at a cost. Specifically, if you're trying to reach rural communities, make sure inclusivity is assured in the process, you have to innovate, you have to come up with ways that you can reach the poorest of the poor, the 40% with no form of identity. So one issue we faced was registering people. We have to be mobile. So portability was very important for us. So to go and reach this the parts of the country, and I must say about 70% of Ethiopia still live in rural areas engaged in agrarian activities. It was very important for us to have this functionality for registration officers. But at the time, MOSIP had it on their plan, but it was not developed, but we needed it. We needed it today or yesterday. And so we reached out to MOSIP and say, we'll dedicate 2 senior developers. Can we do this in 4 months, I think, or 4 or 5 months?
No, that's not true.
And so we ended up co-developing this with the MOSIP team, which allowed us to actually do registration in rural areas. On top of that, the USSD resident service is another contribution from FIDA or NIDP Ethiopia to MOSIP, where, when we came up with the law, the National ID Law, the proclamation, which was also followed by the Personal Privacy Protection Law. It's very important that I mentioned this because our rollout of FIDA was also accompanied by a privacy law. So we take privacy very, very seriously. Everything that was mentioned today, from consent to ensuring of collection of minimal data, interoperability, and also making sure that citizen owns the data. So our system, and this is mostly MOSIP architecture, is end-to-end encrypted. So we hold the data as government, but the owner of the data is ultimately the citizen. And so one of the provisions of the law was to allow citizens to make updates online. So if they want to change their address or their age or their name was misspelled, they can go to a portal and actually make changes to it. But the problem was, like I said, a lot of people use feature phones. On feature phones, you cannot do that. You need a connection to the internet with a web portal. And so we needed to develop a USSD-based resident service that allowed residents to do that. But MOSIP hadn't done that at the time. So we were forced into collaborating. I'll say this is one of those good things where you are forced to do it together. So, but I'm happy we did that. Today, our citizens can benefit from USSD-based resident services as well.
Okay. Due to lack of time, I think we need to close it. So I would also take this opportunity to really commend your teams on learning MOSIP to a larger degree as part of our capacity building exercise. Hats off to you. You guys are attending more trainings, more speeches than us, and attending more conferences and talking about MOSIP than us. So that shows the real power of dissemination. I would just allow 30 seconds to both of you, and you can do some closing remarks. Yeah.
Again, the implementation of the national ID in the Philippines could have been done without the support of the MOSIP. And until now, we really felt the presence of the MOSIP, especially when we encounter technical issues. So as of the moment, collaboration is on still a very high to really capacitate the Philippine Statistics Authority, the personnel, to continue and enhance our implementation of the MOSIP platform. Thank you.
I just want to conclude by giving an example of how far our program has gone. Recently, we signed an agreement with UNHCR to support 1 million refugees in Ethiopia with our digital ID. That, for UNHCR, was the first globally where they share the data of refugees with a government entity, and an African government entity at that, where we do the duplication and then issue refugee IDs. So for me, that's one of the highlights of how far our program has come. And I'm happy to be here, and thank you, Team India, and of course, Naga and the team from Bangalore for having us here. And I really want to see this community growing, and hopefully we'll convene next time with maybe double the size that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite the following panelists for the second panel discussion of the day on building in India for the world, innovation and startups. Prashant Mudu, CEO of Jakarta, Ravi Tyagi, Chief General Manager of Small Industries Development Bank of India, Saurabh Drolia, Director Google Pay, Thomas Harjano, CTO of Connection Science and Engineering, MIT, and our moderator, Jasminder Singh Gulati, founder of Digital Desh and Full Stack Capital.
Yes, Thomas. Good afternoon, everyone. I know this is the last one before lunch, so I will try to be as crisp as possible. To all the esteemed people here, good afternoon. I think we've had a very good first half of the session. And my job is to now pick all that we've done and try to make everybody talk about how DPI is obviously a very public infrastructure, but it allows a lot of private innovation. And you've heard Amitabh Kant sir talk about it, you heard Sharad talk about it, but quickly with this panel that I have, we are going to discuss how not only DPI, which is in a sense a very public infrastructure, but is privately positioned, and there are some private people here with me, both big tech and not all big tech is bad. They're also with me, and also I think newer things are emerging because of this. In many ways, DPIs are future safe. Even we don't know what's going to happen next year. And that's the first where I invite Prashant, who's with Jakarta. And I call him the first signs of a private infrastructure publicly provisioned. So it's quite a difficult thing to explain. But Prashant, over to you. We have less time, so I know you have 2-3 slides, the only slides we have today. Do talk about what you are doing.
Thank you. Your Excellencies and distinguished guests, thank you for the opportunity to present to this distinguished audience of thought leaders. I want to talk about a unique public-private good, a macroeconomic indicator of MSME economic activity that we have created as a public-private infrastructure in India, riding on the robust digital public infrastructure created by the Government of India. To set context, there are a number of indicators that tell us about the performance of economies at a country level. We have the GDP, the GVA, the Purchasing Manager Index, so on. These give us a snapshot of what is happening at a macroeconomic level for various sectors such as manufacturing, services, agriculture, and so on. As all of us here know, small businesses make up a foundation of any economy, with more than 90% of the businesses in the world are small businesses who have a significant contribution to the global economy. Back in India, the MSME sector as it is defined accounts for more than a quarter of the national GVA, more than a third of India's manufacturing GVA, almost half of India's exports, and it is the powerhouse of the economy, the growth engine. And yet, in this present scenario of macro indices such as the GVA, the Index of Industrial Production, that measures manufacturing activity, as well as the survey-based indices that capture business expectations and a sentiment, there is no index that captures the lifeblood of the Indian economy, which are the small and medium enterprises, the micro, small and medium enterprises on a regular basis. So that is the problem that we have tried to solve for. There was a need for a fact-led, high-frequency MSME-specific index. Working in close cooperation with the Small Industries Development Bank of India, SIDBI, we at Jakarta have built a deeply engaged Jakarta Sampoorn, which is India's first and only economic activity index of credit-seeking MSMEs. The data is consent-led, digitally accessible, GST sales data. How did we use the DPI? In 2017, India introduced a goods and service tax, a successor to the value-added tax, a national level tax that was collected at one source from all parts of the economy, and all invoices that are digitally uploaded serve as an authentic, reliable, and official source of MSME data. This enables us to use their behavior as collateral. Jakarta and SIDBI leverage this network to bring out an indicator of sales activity of MSMEs. As I explained, this is a unique case of public-private partnership. A private technology company, Jakarta, and with SIDBI, the custodian of India's MSME credit ecosystem, we've created Jakarta Sampoorn, which is a public good built on private infrastructure to promote the MSME credit ecosystem in India. Jakarta is built by a team of credit experts, data scientists, and economists that has been tracked over 4 years and maps strongly to macroeconomic conditions. The monthly index, which has only a 4-week reporting cycle, is based upon stratified sets of credit-seeking MSMEs belonging to the micro, small, and medium categories from a representative mix of sectors spread across the country. The index has insights at various levels and slices: industries, states, gender, type of enterprise, and so on. The movement of Sampoorn has much to offer in its insights. It is an effective and timely tool for financial institutions, policymakers, economists, and researchers in interventional actions to efficiently direct developmental and commercial capital to SMEs. And finally, what does an index like this take to build? I just want to list all of the factors. I think many of them were discussed today in the room, but most importantly, we need a champion. The champion in our case was the Government of India, the digital public infrastructure it created, and of course, SIDBI, which was a true champion in helping us build and propagate this index across the country.
Thank you, Prashant.
Thank you.
So here is a private company which works with a government organization, SIDBI, and Ravi, I'll bring you in. And Ravi represents India's largest development bank for small businesses. In many ways, is almost plays as a champion of small businesses and a regulator at times. And Ravi, what is your experience both with a thing like Jakarta and how you are working in future after this success with other DPIs that you are started to engage with, certainly in the revenue terms of small businesses?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I represent SIDBI, as informed, which is the apex financial institution for MSME sector in the country. And I think this sector is very important. I'm just talking on behalf of the enterprise sector because like most of the countries in the world, India also faces challenges of employment. And it's very critical that our micro, small and medium enterprises actually grow and have a lot of enablements provided by government, including credit. Especially the informal segment. India has more than 100 million informal enterprises. Now, these are very, very small people, just 1 or 2 people outfits, and very informal, still not in the tax net. So if these segment, and together with their families, it could be 400 million people who are touched by these enterprises. So it's very critical that the benefits or the test of DPI, I would say, is that whether these families, these enterprises are getting benefited by the DPI that has been created. And that's where I feel there has been a phenomenal shift that today in India, for last couple of years, if you see the credit bureau data, if you see the bank strategies, if you see the growth in credit, today everything is happening at the bottom of the pyramid. Most of the bank strategies are built today for very small value credit because that was completely untapped for 10 years ago. And with the DPI, suddenly it's so much simpler and I would say also risk controlled approach of banks is possible to go to these people and give them money. So today money is flowing to informal segment in a very large way. Sometimes the regulators do get concerned that is it too much credit going to the informal segment? But it's not too much credit. It's credit going because earlier it was thought very high risk, but the data suddenly has taken over. Earlier, the decision making, the risk management of the banks was a lot of times judgment based of risk officers, credit officers, policymakers would decide this is good to give, this segment is not good to give. But the data now becomes the supreme decision maker. There's so much of standardized data flowing from Indian DPI today to the banks that, the banks are making risk scores, risk management systems, which are independent of judgment bias. And these data is pointing them and pushing them to go to segments which they never thought or take more risk in the segment. So today, for example, as an institution, small engineering workshops, small engineering managers, small businesses, where SIDBI never gave machinery finances directly also, or banks. These were typically non-bank finance company. But today we give loans up to even $300,000, $400,000 in 10 minutes because of the huge data, very high quality data of these small businesses flowing to us, the GST data, the bank statement data, the identity, KYC, documentation. So everything just takes 10 minutes, and within 48 hours, we are able to disburse after a visit to the enterprise. At the small value credit of $1,000 or up to $5,000 is completely automated in the entire banking industry. I would say anyone who is not doing that will just lag behind. So for that value credit, straight through processes in credit have been enabled through the DPI because nobody wants to take a decision. There's such smart scores have been built, smart engines have been built like with fintechs like Jokata, who have built engines to read a bank statement, tell you so many insights on a bank statement which an individual would have never been able to assess because their scores are built on thousands and millions of enterprises data and their default data in future. So suddenly there is a flow of credit. The test is whether the flow is increasing. Yes, the flow is increasing. Whether the rates are coming down, number two, for all sections of MSMEs, yes, they are coming down because the effort of the banks to go out and sell is suddenly reducing because the product is available digitally. Their cost of distribution is drastically coming down. Their cost of monitoring, decision making, everything is coming down. So the costs have come down for respective segments in the economy. And number three is whether the time is faster. I mean, that's a no-brainer because all this is crashing time like anything. That for the decisions that we used to take 2 months, we take now minutes, hours, or maybe just a day or two. So definitely what I feel is, apart from so many other benefits of DPI, the biggest thing is that's a real push to the economy because it goes in, if that money goes as credit in a larger number of enterprises, that's pure economic value which is being added to the country or a nation. And that's what is, I would say, a matured thing happening. And built on that, as you said, the possibilities of further building partnerships is suddenly increasing. So we are engaging with fintechs as a policy. The institution engages with fintechs. Like Jokata, we have built a score. We have built another score for FIT score, as we call it, for MSMEs. And we feel this data protocol. The next thing is that, yes, we are getting a lot of standardized data, but I think what Indian iSpert and Sharad especially is working very passionately on that is building open credit enable network. That even having some standard protocols for credit, because so many banks, if a customer today approaches bank A, bank B, bank C, bank D, all of them will have digital, but they'll all be working in so different ways that still it's some hard work for him. But if the standard credit protocols come in, it's easier for the customer also to go to multiple banks or the banks to, pick up a customer from another bank. So this credit is suddenly changing. The DPI has changed, enabled partnerships, set up protocols, set up digital platforms for government interventions. I'll stop there and let it take.
Super. Thank you. Thank you. So I don't want to say it, but small tech, public infrastructure, let's get big tech. So Saurabh is the product manager in Google for UPI. And we've said a lot about innovation and unicorns and private companies in India doing fairly well based on DPI. 40% of them are on digital public infrastructure. But sometimes we miss telling that I don't know how many places does Google Pay work on UPI in the world. You'll have to obviously say that. But Saurabh, who represents UPI, they're a participant in what we are doing. So is PhonePe, Walmart company. They're participants in what we are doing. We've, by design, kept them a part of our innovative life cycle. So Saurabh, would you like to talk about how Google is seeing this opportunity and how you're working on DPIs and with government to work further?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Saurabh Trolia, and I'm privileged to be here on behalf of Google. And as I've seen, I've been part of Google Pay for about 3 years, and it's been a very humbling experience to see the growth of UPI over it's been there longer than 3 years, but just to see how it has empowered and created opportunity for millions of Indians around the country. And if we look at any payment system, the very core promise is anybody should be able to pay anyone, and it should just work. And what I've spent next 2 minutes is talking about how working with, how the public and private partnership has enabled based on 3 tenets, which we have heard through the day. One is your interoperability. The second one is partnership. I believe that's the crux of enabling this. And the third one is how is Google working with the ecosystem building for inclusivity. So starting with interoperability, when we say pay anyone, anywhere, it works. So in UPI, when we talk about a person-to-person payment, any person can pay from any bank to any bank. They can use any app, and to pay any app, it does not have to be the same app on both sides. And when you talk about anywhere, all this while UPI was within India, but now UPI has been even expanding outside India. For example, it's in different stages of rollout, but now an Indian traveling to Paris can buy an Eiffel Tower ticket using UPI. And when we talk about interoperability, this was in letter, but it's even there in spirit, which takes me to the second leg, partnership. So what happens is for UPI to happen is literally hundreds of participants in the ecosystem have to work in lockstep to actually make this happen. As UPI has had a phenomenal growth, all of us had to work together to scale our infrastructure to literally support hundreds and thousands of transactions per minute. The second part is there have been forums created to actually share knowledge, understand what are the challenges, how we can make it better. And third, it's even about sharing information and how we can make the ecosystem safe. Now, moving on to the last part about building for inclusivity. As many know, India is a very diverse country. About 410 million users use UPI. They come from different backgrounds. They speak different languages. They have different level of digital literacy and different level comfort. So there are 3-4 things that Google Pay has done to enable the payment transformation. The number first is making the user experience very simple. Usually when people go out, they think, I want to pay the person A, this much amount. So if you look at the app, it's actually based on what we call as chat-based interface. So you see the person you have paid. So that makes it very easy. Secondly, the country being linguistically very diverse, we have actually experimented with English. So there's actually Hindi in Roman script, so a lot of people find it much easier to read. And the part that we have learned is it's not only about the app, but when payments don't work under certain conditions, we proactively show people the error messaging and what is the state of the money in those languages, so they develop that comfort and they continue to build trust. And the third and the most critical part is when we talk about payment at this scale, trust and safety is very important. You make it simple by investing a lot behind the scenes to make the payment safe. So at Google, we have spent a lot of time building your ML models using AI to make sure every payment is very safe. If we feel the other party is a fraudster, we actually proactively block it. We take measures like showing warnings to the user in bilingual mode so they have peace of mind and they can trust not only Google Pay, but UPI as a payment mechanism. So here, to summarize, it shows how everybody, when aligned towards a common goal, work together can deliver where the whole becomes a lot more than a sum of parts.
Simple question is if people were to adopt India stack and let's say UPI to some extent, our payments gateway, will Google Pay be in that country to help the
Yes, Google Pay will definitely be there.
There you go. That's very good. I'm going to move to Thomas. I know we have less time and food is waiting. Thomas is the birther of ideas. He is the CTO of the MIT Connections Lab. Sharad and I have some good fortune of engaging with him for a year. I will introduce him a little bit more as, of course, working very closely with Sandy, who like Wendy Hall and Tim Berners-Lee are one of the few people who the internet can be attributed to this field. In many ways, they are also not only the birthers of new technology, but the conscious keepers of the technology. It's very vital for academicians and certainly MIT of that stature to keep innovating for either countries or for US or other places to keep the general flow of conscience on what is the right thing to do for what we are doing. So Thomas, I want to bring you in this case and what do you think? In many ways, I don't want to prompt you, but our approach is slightly different from a Chinese or an American approach.
Right.
But I do want you to talk about that.
So first of all, thank you, Your Excellencies, for inviting me. Actually, two thank yous. The second thank you is for contributing so many talented Indian faculty and students at MIT, as you guys see as you walk around MIT campus. So we've been collaborating with Sharad and Jess and Jay for like 3 years. I think initially we had an event at MIT that we hosted for the World Bank, and we had Sharad speak, and we were like wowed by the vision that Sharad had, and that's why we wanted to work with you guys very closely. We think India is going to be an economic leader in that region of the world, of course, and so we think it's a worthwhile investment on our part to actually work with you. As you know, the MIT mission written on the wall is to solve the world's hardest problems. And so we take that pretty seriously. Just to cut things short, we love the stack that you have. You've got identity, payments, and data. And I think for the next layer, I think we need to focus on AI, artificial intelligence, as a public good, as a public service. And so this is what we'd like to work with Sharad and Jay, Jas and Jay, and the team at iSpirit, and of course with everybody else in India. But I'll cut it short there because I know, we've got enough food waiting.
Thank you so much. I think this is a very diverse group of people. As I said, we've got all covered, as I said. I will give time back to Madhu. I know we could have gone one more round, but I apologize. We have just overshot. Madhu, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was a perfect display of the 4 pillars of economy coming together: the private players, the government, the digital public infrastructure, and the non-profit think tanks. Thank you so much. We now break for lunch, again at Vienna Cafe. It's on the house. Thank you for attending the morning sessions. We shall regroup at 3 p.m. There will be 2 breakout sessions. The first breakout session will be on identity, open G2P, and open networks. This will be in room C. And then we have the second breakout session, which is running parallelly at room D, conference room D, on DPI safeguards. We all reconvene at 3 o'clock till 5:30 p.m. in the breakout rooms. Thank you so much. Namaste.